So, you want to fake your own death. Not for the drama. You've done the math on your actual life, the debts, the sentence, the marriage, whatever it is, and you've decided the cleanest exit is to stop existing. Walk into the water, leave the shoes on the beach, and let a better version of you walk out the other side under a different name. Here's the first thing you need to know. Faking your own death is the cheapest crime on this channel to start, and the most expensive one you will ever finish paying for. In January 2023, a man in Kentucky named Jesse Kipf faked his death without a boat, without a body, without leaving his chair. He used a doctor's stolen login to get into Hawaii's death registry, filled in a death certificate worksheet, certified himself dead with a forged digital signature, and the system believed him. The state of his birth now listed him as deceased. Total cost of the murder weapon: a username and a password. He did it, in part, to get out of $116,000 in child support. He was sentenced to 81 months in federal prison and ordered to pay nearly $196,000. He tried to erase a $116,000 debt and walked out owing more, plus 6 3/4 years. That is the entire business model of faking your death in one man. So let's price it out properly. What it costs to disappear, who's tried it, what they spent, what they got, and the one reason the math has never, ever worked. Let's start with the death itself, because that's the part you think is hard, and it's the cheapest thing you'll buy. Your problem is a body. Specifically, you don't have one to leave behind because you're using yours. So every faked death in history is built around that single hole in the plan, and there's only one way to fill it. You choose a death that eats the body: drowning, a boating accident, a light aircraft going down over water, a fall from a bridge into a river at night. That is not a coincidence, and it is not clever. It is the most predictable decision you could possibly make, which is exactly why it's the first thing every fraud investigator on Earth is trained to distrust, because drowned bodies come back. They surface, usually within a few days. When the water is searched and it gives up nothing at all, the case does not quietly close. It opens. Cost of this stage: a second-hand boat, a rented plane, some staged wreckage, a few $1,000s. If the whole plan were this step, everyone would get away with it. Nobody gets away with the next step, because now you need to be someone. Not spiritually, logistically. A dead man cannot rent an apartment. A dead man cannot open a bank account, see a doctor, get a job, or cross a border. Dead is not a place you can live. So the moment your death is registered, you have a brand new, urgent problem. You need a living identity that isn't yours. I'm not going to walk you through how people manufacture one, and if that's why you clicked, this is the wrong video. What matters is what it does to your ledger. The instant you take on a false identity, you have committed a fresh federal crime, completely separate from any insurance you're chasing. You have doubled your criminal exposure, and you've done it before you've seen a single dollar of payoff. And you've bought it on subscription. There is no point at which you get to stop being a fake person. There's no retirement. Every year for the rest of your life, you are one traffic stop, one hospital admission, one passport scan away from the end of everything. Which brings us to the cost nobody puts in the plan: the cost of staying dead. You now have to live a complete human life without touching a single system that records human lives. No credit, no mortgage under your real name, no tax return, no health insurance, no pension, no employment history, no calling your mother on her birthday. Think about what that actually costs you. Not in dollars, in access. You have voluntarily deleted yourself from every institution that makes ordinary life affordable. You will pay cash for everything. You will overpay for housing that doesn't ask questions. You will work jobs that don't check names, which means you will earn less, forever, than the person you erased. The people who fake their death to escape financial ruin almost always end up poorer than they started. They traded a bad credit score for a lifetime of economic invisibility, and economic invisibility is expensive. And that's the version where nothing goes wrong.
Now, here's the mechanism at the center of this whole thing. The reason faking your death looks brilliant on paper and fails in reality every single time. A dead man doesn't need anything. A living man needs everything. That's it. That's the whole trap. A corpse has no expenses, leaves no trace, makes no calls. But you are not a corpse. You still have to eat, sleep somewhere, get paid, see a dentist, cross a border, and talk to another human being. Because it turns out, total, permanent, absolute silence is something almost no person alive can actually sustain. And every one of those actions writes a record. A passport scan, a bank login, a phone pinging a tower, your face in the background of someone else's photo, a delivery address, a property listing. The investigator hunting you does not need one perfect clue. They need a timeline. They just need to prove that a man who died in 2002 bought a phone in 2007. And in a world of biometric borders and facial recognition, that timeline gets easier to build every year you stay dead. You are not fighting a detective. You are fighting the entire record-keeping infrastructure of modern life, and it never sleeps, never retires, and never forgets you existed. Which is why the truly rich almost never do this. They don't need to. If you have real money and you want to vanish, you don't fake a death. You buy a second passport and legally walk out the front door. For everyone who can't afford the legal exit, there's this, and there's the man whose entire job is to make sure it fails. Because here's who you're actually up against, and it's not the police, it's the insurance company. When you fake your death for a payout, you're not stealing from the government. You're filing a claim against a private company whose entire business is deciding which dead people are really dead. They employ investigators who do nothing else. They are patient, they are funded, and unlike the police, they have a direct financial motive to prove you're alive. Because if you're alive, they keep the money. Speaking of protecting what's yours from people digging through records to find you, because the same trail that catches a fake death, the data brokers, the address histories, the leaked databases, is the same trail that lets anyone find the real you. Now, back to the graveyard, and the men who are in it on paper only. Case 1. The Canoe Man. In 2002, a British prison officer named John Darwin paddled a canoe out from the English coast and didn't come back. The wreckage was found, the body was not, and his wife collected the insurance. Here's the detail that made him famous. For a chunk of the years he was supposedly dead, John Darwin was living next door to his own house, coming through a connecting door, while his sons believed their father had drowned. The couple eventually slipped away to Panama, and that is where it ended. Not by college work, but by a photograph, a picture of the two of them, alive, posted on an estate agent's website. He came back claiming amnesia. Nobody believed him. He and his wife each served over 6 years. 5 years of discipline, 2 lives destroyed, 1 photo. Case 2. The Pilot. January 2009, Indiana financial advisor Marcus Schrenker, with regulators closing in, took off in a private plane, radioed a distress call, and parachuted out into the dark, leaving the aircraft to crash on autopilot. The most cinematic fake death in modern history. It lasted about 2 days because Schrenker then emailed a friend about it. He didn't just get caught. He added destroying an aircraft and deceiving the Coast Guard to the charges he was already running from. The escape made his sentence longer, not shorter. Case 3. The Banker. Price, facing the collapse of a fraud, staged his suicide off a ferry. A note, a jump, a body that would never be found. He was declared legally dead. He was in fact in Florida under another name. He lasted about 18 months, which on this list makes him a champion, and then he was caught the way most of them are caught. Not a manhunt, an ordinary traffic stop, an ordinary cop, an ordinary database returning a match. Look at the shape of these. Darwin, caught by a photo. Schrenker, caught by an email. Price, caught by a traffic stop. Not one of them was undone by a brilliant detective. They were undone by contact, by the ordinary friction of being alive in a world that writes everything down. Investigators who work these cases resolve very nearly all of them, and most people are caught fast. Not years, hours, days. So let's talk about the ways this goes wrong, because there are 3, and they get worse as they go. Failure 1. You get caught, which, as we've established, is not a risk, it's a timeline. The only variable is whether it takes 2 days or 18 months. Failure 2. The accomplice. You almost certainly can't do this alone, because a dead man can't file his own claim. Someone living has to sit across from an insurance adjuster and grieve convincingly on camera, sometimes for years. That person, usually a spouse, sometimes a child, is now a co-conspirator committing fraud on your behalf, carrying a secret that only gets heavier. Investigators know this. It's why they don't chase the dead man. They watch the living one.
You didn't build an escape. You built a second suspect who loves you. Failure 3, and this is the one that doesn't show up in the fantasy. The people who grieved you. They mourned. Genuinely. They lost weight, lost sleep, buried someone. And when they find out, and they will find out, most of them do not feel relief. They feel used. Some never speak to you again. Darwin's own sons had to learn that their father had been alive, next door, the whole time. You didn't escape your life. You made it permanently unavailable. And you took everyone who loved you down with you. So let's run the final math, the way we always do. Startup cost. Low. A boat and a lie. Ongoing cost. Everything you have. Every dollar, every relationship, every institution, every night of sleep for the rest of your life. Success rate. Functionally 0. Payout. If you somehow beat the odds. Igor Voratinov's family collected $2 million on his staged death in Moldova before he was caught and extradited. Jose Salvador Lantigua chased a claim reported at over $9 million. On paper, those are the highest returns of any scheme on this channel, and every single one of them ended in a courtroom. Which brings us back to Jesse Kipf, the man who started us off. He faked his death to erase $116,000. He ended up owing $196,000 plus 81 months in prison, plus the fact that he now has to legally prove he's alive, because on paper, in the state of Hawaii, he had killed himself. That's the real product you're buying here. Not freedom, not a clean slate. You are spending every asset you own and everyone who loves you to purchase the single most expensive and least convincing lie a person can tell. Because a passport, at least, is a real document. A fake death is just a very expensive way of being the only person at your funeral who knows it's a fraud.